And he said to them, "Oh, how foolish you are! How slow of heart to believe all that the prophets spoke. Was it not necessary that the Christ should suffer these things and enter into his glory?" Then, beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them what referred to him in all the Scriptures. Then they said to each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he spoke to us on the way and opened the Scriptures to us?" He opened the Scriptures to all that concerned him. Well, in one way, all of the Scriptures concern Christ. And we recognize in them a trajectory leading up to a full clarification in the divine Son of Man and his death and resurrection. And the Scriptures really center on a series of God's interventions, God's initiatives, which we call his works. Creation, the election of the people of Israel, the making of a covenant with them, the sustaining of the kingdom, the exile from it and the return to it, and all the reflections of the temple period, the deepening wisdom that set the foundation for the manifestation of Christ. And at the pinnacle of that trajectory is the death and resurrection of the Lord, in which we encounter the supreme work of God. When at the moment of the crucifixion, God counters all of human weakness and all of human sin with his goodness, which is victorious for life. This is the story that the Scriptures tell us. And with the death and resurrection of the Lord as the end point of that story, Jesus is walking with the disciples on the road to Emmaus. His response to their trauma is to go back into this history of God's works and to show them how this current experience of his death and resurrection, which has them so upset, is part of that ongoing work. And they are invited to see in this crystal moment the beauty of what we call revelation. That gift of God by which he makes known to us what we otherwise would not have discovered. The election of Israel, the manifestation of Christ in the incarnation, his death and his resurrection, his ascension, the sending of the Holy Spirit, the depth and significance of all of these events amounts to God's disclosure of his own plan and even of his own life. And it's revelation, this disclosure of God, that also promises us that these ancient scriptures that Jesus opened up on the road to Emmaus can also be opened up for us. And what Jesus does for the disciples, he does for us. Because when he opens the scriptures to us, Jesus allows the moment of the making of things, the creation, the moment of the redemption, and the exodus in between them, to reveal God's unfailing concern for each of us, his created ones. Now, the supreme time when Jesus opens the Scriptures is at Mass. Mass is the Emmaus along our road. As we said yesterday, Jesus walks us down the road to Emmaus, and he responds. First, he listens to our pain, listens to our perplexity, listens to our joy. And then at Mass, he sits us down and shows us the context for our lives. And the fruit of the resurrection is that we come to recognize that because Jesus lives, our living, our working, our loving, our playing, our reflecting, our imagining, all become part of this work of God by which we are being prepared to share in the fullness of the transformed life that Jesus now has. The opening of the Scriptures invites us to see the continuum of God's love moving through time, informing humankind century by century of his love and his goodness and his forgiveness. And Jesus is the greatest moment of clarity in that trajectory. But the trajectory does not stop, because with the coming of the Holy Spirit, each of us is invited to attach ourselves to the works of God, recognizing that we are one of them. I invite you not to lose heart then, and to rejoice in this resurrected life we have begun. And we'll talk to you tomorrow.